Hi, I'm Megan Finnerty of USA Today. I'm the founder and director of the Storytellers Project, and we so appreciate you taking a chance on live storytelling and sharing your evening with us. Tonight, we're joining Humana and 5 Americans from across the country to create community with you. Since 2016, the Storytellers Project has brought more than 100 shows each year to communities across the nation. But we've canceled our in-person shows as part of the network's response to the coronavirus. And while it feels unsafe to be together, breathing on each other in theaters, it does feel necessary to be together online. So tonight, we have handpicked incredible storytellers and inspiring people who are also funny and good looking to bring you stories about entrepreneurship and hustle. Because let's face it, oh my gosh, this year has been very hard on our independent entrepreneurs, on our hustlers, on our grinders, and we want to celebrate their resiliency in this show. But this show is not like how we made it through the pandemic. This show is more about like the fullness of their journeys as entrepreneurs. So before we get into it, I want you to meet our storytellers who we are so proud of and so lucky to have tonight. I want to bring up Sheree Hartwell. She's the owner and director of the Ford Robert Black Agency. They're a modeling and talent agency. Hi, Sheree. Hi. Jeff Wuslich is the co-founder and president of Cardinal Spirits, which is an independent distillery in Indiana. Hi, Jeff. Keena Pickett is the co-founder. Keena Pickett is the co-founder of Zipper, a digital platform, which is super cool. It's one of those like behind the scenes things that makes everyone's lives better. Technically, it shares photos, videos, and content between creators and editors and media and agencies. Keena powers creative people behind the scenes. But really, he's just in his house right now with a hat on. Okay, Allison Devane is the founder of Teespressa. It's a tea cafe, a series of them across the country, as well as a tea products company. And she'll kind of let you know a little bit more about what that's about in a second. And Lisa Dahl is coming to us from Sedona, Arizona. She's the executive chef, and she's the owner of the Dahl Restaurant Group, which is a collection of 5 award-winning restaurants in Sedona. Hi, Lisa. Thanks for being here. Thank you to all of Hi. Thanks to all of our storytellers. So tonight is not a TED Talk. It's not a Toastmasters. It's not a how-to or an inspirational speech. This isn't going to be one of those like rise and grind, I eat hustle for breakfast type of storytelling events. Like that's not our vibe. Instead, this is more like visiting where you open your heart. You want to be like, so you can receive the stories of people you're curious about, you want to be a little bit closer to. These are real everyday people. Like these are our actual neighbors, and they're not going to like try to even sell you their products. Although I've had most everybody's products, and I think that like I can recommend them. Instead, though, we just want you to like listen and receive these stories, be there for each other tonight. Some are going to be really polished and professional, kind of formal and really great, because that's how our storytellers want to put their best foot together. Others of our storytellers are going to want to be like more, or sometimes they're a little more casual and they're conversational. What I want you to know is like, that's who all of our storytellers really are. We at the Storytellers Project don't like do a lot of fine-grained coaching with like how people self-present. We deeply believe that the way that people tell stories is related to our ability to receive them and truly know them. And so with that, I want you to remember, we believe creating empathy and understanding is vital at all times, but especially in times of uncertainty. So it is a blessing for us to bring you this show tonight. I'm excited to bring up our first storyteller. Sheree is here with a story about how she grew into her job. Can anyone else hear her? Oh, Sheree, we're going to have somebody else go for just a second, and we're going to figure out what's going on with your audio. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, storytellers, it's live. Okay, I'm so sorry about that. Hey, we are going to go with our next storyteller, Keena. I know you were planning on going second, but we're going to bring you up right now until we can figure out what's going on with Sheree's audio. Can we hear you?
Hey, can you get me?
We can. Thank you. We can. Okay, take it off, Keena. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, I was planning on having a couple minutes to breathe, but I guess I'll just jump into this. So, my name is Keena Pickett. I am, I guess, what you would call like a serial entrepreneur. I grew up in Vermont. Lost my father at a really young age. My dad died when I was 2 in a car accident. And I was raised by my mother, and she worked really hard for me and my brother. And It was a great life, lots of skiing and living a life outside. I ended up going to school in Maine, Bates College, graduated. And because of my skiing prowess, I guess back then, I really wanted to move out west. I think it was just a passion of mine to get to the mountains. I ended up moving to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, where within a year, I went pro in skiing. So I was a professional skier and skied all around the world for probably 12 years. And I think in that time frame, I learned probably the most about who I was as a person, and also about about life. I think travel and experiences is all we have. And I'm excited to tell you kind of what we're up to now, because it kind of stems right into that. And so I skied professionally for 12 years, traveled the world. Most of my time I spent living in Europe and kind of other places, and climbed some crazy mountains and did some crazy stuff like that, which was really enriching and incredible, because I got to meet a lot of really cool people and see a lot of really amazing places as well. And then from skiing professionally, this leads us into more of what I'm up to today. So I got into production because I was always around cameras, and I was fascinated with cameras all the time. And so a really good friend of mine, Chris Patterson, who's still the director of photography for Warren Miller, was like, hey, you should be a producer. And I was like, I don't even know what that is. And so I started getting into more video production and story production when I was living in Jackson Hole. So I did that for a while. And then, it was really fulfilling, because I was an art major, and the creative nature of storytelling really kind of hit a chord with me. So I did that for about 4 or 5 years in the Jackson Hole area. And then I ended up moving to Montana, and I met a very, very, very talented creative director by the name of Chris Murphy. And we started a creative production company called Helio. Helio was, we created some of the best content that I've ever seen, for a lot of large brands. And it was really exciting. And we had a great time doing it. And, I learned a lot during that time period as an entrepreneur, because this was like the first business that I actually started, right? I think I had broken down a lot of boundaries in my life. Being one of the first professional black skiers was a big one. And then I think because of that, I really didn't have a fear of just jumping into things as an entrepreneur. I wasn't really scared to fail. I was always very interested in the process of starting a business. So I started this business with this guy who was really incredible. Like I said, we created a lot of content, a lot of brands like Red Bull and Vans and Nike and Intel and Microsoft and a lot of these brands. And so during that time period, I noticed a gap in the market from the technology perspective of content creation. And I really felt like there was a need for a new platform to enable what I saw coming, what my business partner saw coming, which was this influx of what we call the influencer or the content creator or the lone wolf. What I think we were looking at was like the phone really was a great democratizer, right? It turned everybody into a content creator. And so when I started Zipper, which is the company that I own now, that was the premise behind starting Zipper, was digital content in my mind was going to be undercut. We also saw that everyone was going to become a content creator because of the phone. What I saw missing in that market was a gap between cloud storage, which is where we put our content, like Dropbox and things like that, and kind of a creative workflow around content. And the ability to actually have a platform that tethered into lots of content creators, because that's what I believed was going to be the future of storytelling. And so I started Zipper about 4 or 5 years ago. Hardest thing I've ever done, by far. Skiing professionally, pretty easy. Jumping off of cliffs, pretty easy. Starting a technology company, incredibly difficult. I think that bringing a new product to market is just something that you can't wrap your head around, because of the complexity of letting people know about what you're doing, right? So, needless to say, we run through this process. We raise money, we create a successful startup, and then all of a sudden, the world starts to get a little strange, right? And COVID hits, and our business gets thrown into a pretty valuable category, which is remote work, which is kind of what we do. Our business is really structured around connecting brands, agencies, and content creators together on the same platform so they can kind of share and talk about media. And so all of a sudden I was forced to work from home like everybody else. I live in Montana, and I had a good view. It was cool. But what I really wanted to do, we had just purchased 1971 Airstream International, 27 foot. And so I turned around to my wife and I said, hey, what if we stuck the family in the Airstream? I have 2 kids. My son, Asher, is 6, and my daughter, Story, is 4. And we have a bulldog named Scout. So I said to my wife, what if we put everyone into the Airstream and I just ran my technology business from the road, and we can just travel the country? And so for the last 2 months, that's exactly what we've been doing. We left August 1st and we left Montana. We spent about 2 weeks in Montana, and then we moved into Wyoming and South Dakota and Virginia, North Carolina. I'm currently in Florida at a friend's house. And then we're on our way to Nashville and then back to Idaho and across the country to the West Coast. The reason we decided to do this was because I wanted to show people that I wanted to eat my own dog food as the CEO of a technology business. I wanted to show people how to use my platform. And so really that is what we are doing right now. It's been really exciting. It's been really rewarding. It's been really trying as an entrepreneur, all of a sudden being shoveled into a 27-foot vehicle with your entire family. The space is very tight. It's been beyond what I could have comprehended. If I had looked out and said, hey, we're going to go do that, and what in my mind did I think it was going to look like, this has been really interesting. The other reason we really wanted to do this was because I wanted to give my kids a life that I had. I wanted to give them a life of adventure, because in my mind, great stories come from great experiences, right? I mean, that's all you have at the end of all of this. All you have is the experiences and the stories that you can share with people. So I wanted to give my kids the same kind of experience that I had growing up. And so that is what we're doing right now. My company is called Zipper. You can check it out at zipper.io. And like we explained before, it's a media-based company in the cloud that enables brands, agencies, and publishers to collaborate around visual media. As far as the trip and how is it going and where we're headed next, you can check it out. You can follow us. We have an Instagram called Beyond Lands Road Trip. You can also follow me on LinkedIn. But what we're trying to do is really show people, if this is a life that they want to live, kind of how to do it. And man, holy cow, have we had some crazy stories. One quick one before I have to jump off. We were in South Dakota and a tornado. We were in a canyon. We got a tornado warning. And my poor son flipped out, and our camper was up in the top of this canyon that previously had been destroyed by tornadoes. And we had to run out and lock down the Airstream and run and get everybody into a hotel. Just never what you're going to find out on the road. But the greatest thing is really about the people that you meet along the way and the experiences that you have along the way. And it's been very interesting using Zipper as the backbone to what I do as a business and show people how I'm doing that in real time from the road. So, I really appreciate everybody showing up, and I'm really excited to listen to the rest of the stories tonight. And kudos to USA Today and for putting this whole thing on. And I'm just super honored and excited to be here. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much for your story. And oh my gosh, thank you for modeling such adventuresome parent behavior. That's awesome. What
You should
happened?
ask my.
Well, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Listen, we're all in it for the stories right now, I think. Keena, thank you so much for your story and your optimism and just like modeling such, again, adventuresome parent behavior, but also being a trailblazer in your whole career. It's really inspiring.
Awesome. Thanks,
Thank you.
Megan.
Awesome. Okay, we're giving Sheree just a second longer. And so we are going to go to Allison Devane, who is speaking to us, as you guys will see, from her beautiful shop. Allison, take it away. Go ahead.
Thank you, Megan. Hi, my name is Allison Devane, and I'm the founder and owner of Espresso. So you may have heard of the show Shark Tank, right? It's the show where entrepreneurs pitch their big ideas to these literal shark investors. Well, I was actually fortunate enough to go on that show a couple months into my business, and I basically bombed it. In fact, I was crying, sobbing on national TV uncontrollably for several minutes after they told me that it was impossible for me to achieve my dream. There's no way that I could do everything that I told them I could do. Like, I'm all over the place, and it's too early. Yeah, good luck, I guess. And so it was really emotional. And honestly, it took me 5 years to see my episode again. And if anything, it lit the fuel to my fire to prove them wrong and to show them that I can do this. And yes, I'm a big dreamer, and I'm going to figure out on the way and achieve this. So this all started when I was young. When I was growing up, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I mean, I wanted to be like an accountant. I wanted to be a market manager. I wanted to be, my favorite job actually is a Kmart cashier when I was really little, because I literally thought the job was people just handed you money. I'm like, Mom, that's like the best job ever. You stand there and you get money all day. So long story short, I just had no idea what I wanted to do. And I thought, I'll figure it out, right? I'll go to college, I'll figure it out. Okay, didn't really figure it out. Senior year, I'll figure it out. All right, I'm out of college now, what? Because every society tells you, you got to get a job. You got to figure out what you're going to do. Moved to New York, still had no idea what I wanted to do. And I was like, okay, shoot. So long story short, went through several jobs, several things, and I landed on working for a startup. And I was like, whoa, this is really cool because I get to do everything that I love. I get to be an accountant. I get to be a marketing manager. I get to be a cashier. So I just knew I had to do that. And so I moved home, moved to Arizona, lived with my mother, and I was going to start a business. So I woke up every day and went to the kitchen fully dressed, right, at 7 a.m. and I went to work. So I had no idea what I wanted to do with myself. So I wrote lists, pros and cons of things I liked, things I don't like, things I'm good at, things I'm not good at. And I was still hitting a wall. And I was like, Dad, what's wrong with me? I have no idea what I want to do. And then he's like, well, if you could get $1 million doing anything, what would it be? And I was like, well, make lattes, of course. I mean, being a barista was the first job I had when I was 16. It was a job that I always went back to intermittently throughout my life. Like, I love making latte art and making the rhinos and making the pictures of trees or whatever the customers requested on top of the latte cup. I love coffee. Yes, Dad, you're a genius. So I was like, all right. That was kind of like my aha moment. And I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to just start another coffee shop. I wanted to do something that was really impactful and something that would change the world. And so I was like, all right, well, my mother's Korean. She's really into tea. And honestly, it wasn't anything special to me. It was something that we drank when we were sick. It was something that was given to us with lunch. And, I was obsessed with coffee. I liked doing the latte art things. And the funny thing about that actually was that coffee wasn't really into me because I got lots of headaches and stomach aches. I actually can't really drink a cup of coffee more than once a week these days. And so I was like, all right, I got to figure something out and make tea cool, right? Because that'd be awesome because I don't get those side effects with that. So I figured out, I was like, all right, I'm going to make tea like coffee, right? And I'm like, I need help because I don't know how to make this machine thing because I'm not a machine person. So I went on the internet and I was just looking for someone that could help me. And then I happened to stumble upon someone who has made espresso machines all their life. And I was like, hey, can you help me make this? And he's like, sure. And I was like, great, I'll be there in 2 weeks. So I told my dad, I was like, hey, I'm meeting some random guy in the woods in Oregon, and we are going to make this. And he's like, no, you're not, by yourself. So we both fly out and go out there. Everything checks out. Everything's great. We figure it out. I file for the trademark, the patent, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I need a name. What is the name? So it's kind of like brainstorming for a long time. Then one day, 4 a.m., I wake up and I was like, it's Teespressa. So I buy all the .coms, I buy the social media accounts, everything, and then I went back to bed. And that's when the real work began. So I started to get my products out there. I was like, I got to prove them wrong. I got to hustle. And so I would call places and be like, hey, can I work with you and just serve tea for free? And they're like, sure. Then I'm like, wait, how do I bring my tea over there? Because we lived in the suburbs with my parents, remember? And my mom's like, here's a $25 laundry cart. And I was like, perfect. So we went to Home Depot, got a piece of scrap wood and like a tablecloth from Home Goods, and that was my cart. Then I was like, great, it doesn't fit in my car. And she's like, well, how about you use the childhood family van and we'll take the back seats out? I was like, awesome, that works. And I still drive this car to this day. And so I would load it all in, go to the place, load it all out, do this stuff even for free, go back, and I would do this 3 times a week. I mean, it was a lot of work. And, and I just knew this is what I needed to do to build my business and my brand. And I was like, well, I got to find home base. I can't be doing this all the time. So I found a partner in downtown to open my first Teespressa location. And that shortly after that, that was actually month 4 when I locked that in. That's when I went on to Shark Tank. So like I said, it was relatively new in the business. And they said it was too early, that my vision is so big and there's impossible for me to achieve it. And again, it was a very traumatizing, mortifying experience. I thought I wasted my time going there. I'm like, you guys just don't understand me. Like, I know I can do this. I really can do this. And at the time, it was a huge, huge failure to me. I mean, I didn't practice. I was like, I went through the scenario. I was like, how could I have made this better? Is it me? Do I really not know what I'm doing? Who am I to think that I could do all these things without even knowing how to do them, right? But as soon as my show aired, my phone just started buzzing, and it aired across the United States. And I get the chills just thinking about that moment, because I felt like, wow, this is it. With every unfortunate situation, every failure that happens in business, you have to look for the positives. You have to learn the lesson from it. And that's when I really learned that those failures and these lessons are what shape your success and what bring you to success faster. The more you fail, the sooner you're going to succeed. So after that moment, it was very encouraging. And it's actually been a number of years since I've been on the show, and my business has grown so much, you guys. I proved them wrong. I did everything that they said that I couldn't do. And I just remember Lori telling me, hey, you got to crawl, then walk, then run. But Lori, I've been running ever since, and that's all I know how to do. And now we offer sugar cubes, these Lux sugar cubes that make instant mimosas and cocktails. We have these Lux elixirs. We're in national retailers like Neiman Marcus and Anthropologie. We opened 4 stores. We're sold online. We dabble on licensing. I mean, it's all amazing stuff. And I never thought that I would be here. And I figured it all out. And it's not enough still. I want to go global. Teespressa will go global. It's my goal to see Teespressa and tea shots being like a staple in the household. Like, everyone knows what a tea shot is. Everyone knows that we were the ones that originated it. And my big goal is to start a school for inner city kids that teaches them about entrepreneurship, because I wish that was a career path that was shown to me. And so I just wanted to share my story with you, just to inspire you to dream big, go after your vision. And just because you don't know how you're going to get there, it's okay. You can do it, because I did. And I hope that I inspire you to keep running too. Thank you so much.
Allison, thank you so much. I love it, man. Sometimes you just don't need to crawl, right? You can go straight to the run.
Yeah, just sprint.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much for your story. And thank you for trusting us to receive your vulnerability. I know it's one thing to like have an embarrassing moment on TV. It's another thing to talk about it on a national storytelling event years later. So you win. You're fully recovered from it. This is it.
And growing.
Right? Awesome. Allison, thank you so much for your story.
Thank you.
So we are excited to bring up Sheree now. She is coming to us. She's got a whole new setup.
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yay!
All right. Sheree is here to talk to us about growing into her career. Take it away.
Thank you, Megan. I guess this year it's about pivoting, right? And so that's what we did. I'm back and now I have sound so you guys can all hear me. So it was the summer of 1987 and I was the third grader at Monte Vista Elementary School in Phoenix, Arizona. I had been competing in beauty pageants and talent competitions that my mother, Sharon, had entered me in. At one of the beauty pageants, we were approached by a scout for a local agency at the time called Plaza 3. They eventually signed me and quickly had a booking for me for the back to school shoot for the Spiegel catalog. At the time, I would have equated it to the Sears catalog. I was to meet at North High School and shoot with the crew from Chicago. Since we were shooting for fall, I was put into a down coat, sweater, hat, mittens, gloves, the whole world. And needless to say, it was 110 degrees that day. But hey, I was making $50 an hour and I was 9 years old. A few months later, the catalog came in the mail, and much to my success, I had made the cover. This, of course, fueled my mother's belief that I had something special, and we proceeded on the weekends with the beauty pageants. A few years passed, and by this time, I was 12 years old with a mouthful of braces and 5'10". In middle school, they were calling me Sheree the Tree. I ended up winning the talent portion of one of the competitions for my tap dancing routine, and part of the prize was a meeting with the infamous Robert Black of the coveted Robert Black agency. We were so excited. My mom and I met with him in the Tempe office, and during that interview, he asked me, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" And I looked right at him and I said, "I want to own a modeling agency." And he perked right up and said, "Wow, this is a girl who really knows what she wants." He offered me a contract that day. And from then on, throughout high school, I did Dillard's print ads for the newspapers, lots of bridal shows, and many hair advertisements. In the summer of 1996, at 18 years old, I was offered an 8-week contract to model in Milan, Italy. I was going to be international. After 12 hours of traveling, I arrived at the agency in Milan and was immediately whisked away to have my measurements taken in the bathroom by two of the bookers who, for the very little Italian that I could understand, didn't like what the tape measure was reading. Mind you, I probably weighed 115 pounds. During the time in Milan, I lived in the model apartment from girls from all over the world. I would equate the model housing to basically a college dorm, very little space or privacy. I found myself during this time going through the models' portfolios, trying to understand why they were booking the jobs that they were and understand the money that they were making. In the back of my mind, I knew that this industry was going to be my career, but I wasn't sure it was going to be as a model. I was somebody who thrived off of structure and security. And what I learned that summer as a model, you never know when you're working. You never know how much money you're going to be making. And the uncertainty was just too much for me. I returned home that fall and enrolled in college at Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff, which was quite perplexing to many because 25 years ago, NAU was very small and definitely didn't seem progressive enough for a girl who had just returned modeling in Milan. To be honest, at the time, it was the only state school that offered a fashion program. Prior to my senior year, my guidance counselor told me that I needed an internship to graduate. So I called up Robert Black and asked him if he would allow me to be the summer intern. He was thrilled to have me, but told me I would have to come off the roster as the model, so there was no conflict of interest. This was totally fine by me because by then I was much more fascinated with the business side of the industry than I was as a model. I spent that summer in the agency learning the lingo, listening to the agents speak, trying to understand why some of the models were booked for projects and not others, basically soaking up everything I could. I was officially on the other side. Upon college graduation, I was determined to leave Arizona and work at a modeling agency. I sent out about 50 paper resumes via snail mail to agencies in LA, San Francisco, Miami, New York, and Chicago. My resume was pretty niche: model, summer intern, college graduate. I started a long road into what was a master's degree in the industry when an agency in San Francisco hired me. I was 22 years old, making $25,000 a year, living in the most expensive city at the time in the US, and definitely hustling. It was the height of the dot-com and money was flowing freely. I remember quoting a job for one of the first jobs I got to work on, and I asked for $4,000 for the day for the girl. I was probably about $2,000 over on standard rates, but somehow I got the client to agree, and I sure caught my boss's attention to sticking to my guns. Eventually, after a few years, I became the director of the division, and I found my groove. By then, I was billing 6 figures a month in income and was the youngest one in the office. After 5 years in San Francisco, it was time to head back to Arizona. My mom had taken ill, and I wanted to be with her. I was on a visit home before relocating. I told her I was having breakfast with Robert Black, who by that time had become my mentor in the industry. I was trying to figure out how I was going to stay in the fashion industry, but move back home to a market with less opportunities. Of course, working for Robert had crossed my mind, but to be honest, I wanted more than just to be an agent. I left that morning and I told my mom, I'm going to ask Robert if he'd sell his agency to me. She looked at me as if I was crazy. I still remember that day, pulling out of my childhood home, knowing today that that was the day that set it all in motion. Much to my surprise, Robert said yes that morning on that very fateful day at breakfast at the Quilted Bear in Scottsdale. I was 26 years old. I had no money, no assets, and nothing to lose. I set foot back in the Ford Robert Black agency in September of 2004 as the agency director. The intent was for me to spend the next 6 months meeting all of the models, the photographers, the clients, and start to build a rapport with all of those that I was going to be working so closely with. In the beginning, there were so many tears, mostly because I was trying to earn the respect of all of these people. I was the youngest one in the office again and trying to fill Robert's shoes. And I'm sure most were thinking, who the hell's this kid? No one knew I was buying the agency, but the local market was quickly changing, and those first 6 months were up. My ailing mother took out a second mortgage on her home and for my down payment to Robert, and our deal became official in March of 2005. I had never read a profit and loss statement, never hired and fired anyone, and definitely didn't go to business school. My 12-year-old dream to own a modeling agency had now come true at such a young age, and I was on my way. 5 years after I bought the agency, my mom passed away, and it was a very trying time for me to continue to get up and lead my company. My biggest cheerleader was gone, but what I learned is that people don't just end up at the top. You have to keep getting up each and every day and going after and working hard for what you want. The last 15 years as a business owner has truly shaped who I am today. Now, with over 350 models and talent on our roster, working in every major market, I've learned to trust my gut and pull the triggers when I felt like it was right. I've also never wavered on my integrity, even in the toughest of situations. In the beginning, I was so personally invested in every model that we signed and every booking that came in the door, much to a detriment. If a model would leave us for another agency, I would feel as though I was being betrayed by my own child. Today, I've learned how to keep a safe distance while also providing a very personal touch. Now, I walk into my office and see young girls sitting in the lobby with their mothers, portfolios in their laps, and waiting for their name to be called. And I realize I've come full circle. 30 years ago, I was that tall, lanky girl with my mother, wondering what was next for me. Thank you for allowing me to share my story.
Sheree, thank you so much for your story. And thank you for like introducing us to Robert. And Sheree's mom is named Sharon, who
Yeah.
I know
you,
was such a
Megan.
huge part of your journey.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Also, she's not Sheree the tree anymore. Now she's just normal Sheree. And I'm so thankful for her to share her story, because it's always really inspiring to hear from a person who like goes from inside the machine to now like trying to make the machine better. And that's how I always think about Sheree, right? Like she was a little kid model and now she works to like make the modeling industry more awesome. And so we're grateful for her time and her work. So now is the time when we are grateful to Humana. You guys know usually Humana sponsors our shows in real life, but they've stuck with us virtually because they believe that sharing stories makes for healthier people, healthier communities, all of that. And they also believe that we need these connections now more than ever, these connections to our health and to each other. And as the coronavirus situation continues to change, which it is constantly, Humana remains committed to serving the health, safety, and well-being of its communities. And they really mean it. Like if you go to their website, they have endless like news updates, tips on how to stay emotionally connected to each other, how to stay physically safe. If you want to go to humana.com, you can learn more about what they're doing to support shows like this and everything else to like keep Americans healthier. So we really appreciate them providing the resources necessary to keep bringing you guys these shows. With that, I'd like to welcome up our next storyteller. Jeff Wuslich is coming to us from his distillery. He's at the bar, but we can't make any orders right now, right? You look like you can't get me anything. Okay, Jeff, take it away.
Well, thank you, Megan. Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it. And the stories tonight have been just wonderful. So great job, everybody. You know, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. And more recently, and specifically, I wanted to start a craft distillery in Indiana. And to be frank, that was a terrible idea. The state laws made it just incredibly difficult. You know, Indiana is famous for having no carryout sales on a Sunday. You know, our city didn't even have like zoning requirements for a distillery. But basically, my name's Jeff. I live in Indiana. I started a distillery. And a lot of people ask me how I learned to make whiskey, but really what they should be asking is how I started a distillery. So let me take you back to 2009. You know, started researching distilleries across the country. I did workshops in Michigan and California and of course, Kentucky. I visited every distillery and conference I could. You know, I researched equipment, yeast, different grains, barrels, just countless other details. You know, I started volunteering to staff judging competitions for the spirits, just everything I could do. In fact, at one of those spirits competitions, I saw almost a fist fight break out over made whiskey and sourced whiskey. You know, I was also dating my wife, Erica, for about, we were about 2 years into our engagement, and we didn't know it, but we had about 2 more years to go before we got married. We were both holding on to jobs because of the recession, and we lived in different areas. So about this time, it was 2013, and after just like a ton of research, a lot of travel, yes, of course, some drinking, people always ask about that, that definitely did happen, and a lot of planning, we were ready to get going. It was about this time that I heard about a law moving through the Indiana General Assembly, so our legislative body here in Indiana, that would have made starting a distillery basically impossible. You see, Indiana and alcohol have always been in what I would call the friend zone, right? They aren't dating. They're certainly not hooking up. I don't think they're ever going to get married because we have all these weird laws, right? Some of them, like the only place you can buy cold beer is at a liquor store. Can't go to a grocery store, can't go to a gas station, only a liquor store. You know, bars have to be separated from the rest of the restaurant by some sort of physical divider. We don't want children to see people sitting at a bar or bottles on the wall, right? And as I said before, we were the last state in the country to have no carry-out alcohol on a Sunday. So, but at the same time, 2013, around the country, craft distilling started to be kind of a thing. You know, you'd seen craft breweries, and now we were having craft distilleries. So legislature came up with somewhat of a compromise, a weird one. They were going to allow breweries, existing breweries and wineries, to start distilleries and start selling directly to the consumer. which is really like the law change that made craft distilling work, allowing you to sell direct to consumer to get that margin that you didn't have to give to a distributor and a retailer. But what they said is that they were only going to allow existing breweries and wineries to start their business, start a distillery. Everybody else would have to start and then wait for 3 years before you could start selling directly to consumer. This meant that if I started, I'd have to start a distillery, start making products, try to sell them to retailers. Meanwhile, a local brewery could start selling spirits tomorrow. I couldn't do tours. I couldn't offer samples. It was just really tough. And I'd never heard anything like this anywhere in the country. And I still haven't heard of it anywhere else today. You know, yes, Indiana has some weird laws, but this was outrageous, quite frankly. You know, we understand there needs to be rules and regulation, and especially when it comes to alcohol, but to pick favorites, to pick winners and losers was just really unacceptable to me. And the people at the table who were organized, had associations, had lobbyists, had connections, were the wineries and breweries, right? The law didn't affect them, and yet their opinions seemed to be the only ones that mattered. At this point in the game, the bill is about to pass out of the House and into the Senate. Our local legislator, spoke on the floor, a last-ditch effort. You know, he said, "Why was the bill structured this way?" But really, nobody listened. So we huddled up as a team. You know, I had really great partners, and we were kind of crushed. Like, what do we do? Do we call it quits? Do we find a new business? There's got to be an easier way to make money. We knew of a distillery that had moved to Michigan, and they were doing really well. Maybe we should move to a different state. You know, we'd already invested a significant amount of money and a lot of time. And of course, we'd already told people, right? Which is the best thing you can do as an entrepreneur, right? Throw your hat over the wall, start telling people you're going to do something, because then you're kind of committed to doing it. So we decided to make a plan to really modernize some of the laws in Indiana, specifically the alcohol law. It was never part of our business plan at Cardinal, to hire a lobbyist, but here we were. So drove up to Indianapolis, came up with a plan. We started with who we knew, which wasn't that many people, where other distilleries might be located, again, not many. And we looked at businesses that could, benefit from having distilleries in Indiana. So, farmers, box makers, bottle manufacturers, label makers, those kinds of people, anybody we could think of. So went up to the State House in Indianapolis, which is a beautiful old limestone building, very formal, very, traditional building, and literally stood in the lobby. This is where lobbyists come from, right? We actually ended up hiring 2 great lobbyists, or as they like to be called, government affairs professionals, Mike O'Brien and Andy Miller, and they helped us, right? You remember that old cartoon from the 70s, like, I'm just a bill, how does a bill become a law? That's exactly what we had to do. We had to figure out who could help us change it, who could introduce, amendments, so that we could start a business along with other great distilleries that are now in Indiana, like West Fork and Bear Wallow, Three Rivers, and Huber's. We wanted to have a tasting room and sell bottles, right? Then the bill was finally brought to committee after all this work, and it wasn't perfect. There was still going to be a wait. They didn't want to move on that. But it did give us an opportunity, a few of us an opportunity, to get started right away. I testified in a very formal room where everybody kind of seemed to know what they were doing except for me. And you could watch it online. I know my family watched. One of our investors came to see us in person at the time, I think just to see if we could pull it off. And honestly, I think a lot of people wondered that same thing. I mean, I knew my mom and my dad believed in me, but did our banker? So anyway, my time came. I made a few nervous jokes. I saw a lot of blank stares. One legislator asked me how much I was planning to invest and how many people we were going to hire. Just a great numbers legislator. I said, maybe $750,000 and maybe 10 people. Well, we ended up really investing closer to 2 million. And, we currently have about 50 people on the payroll. And with partners like the Huber family in Southern Indiana, we got the law passed. It was amazing. And so I know what you're thinking maybe is that, Jeff's a college-educated white guy who figured out how to change laws to benefit his business. No real surprise there. And I think maybe that's a little bit true. But, we had everything going for us to start this business, and it almost didn't happen. But now I realize it's really my job to help disenfranchise individuals and make sure that they're at the table. So I've helped lower that wait from 3 years down to 18 months, and I hope to get it down to 0 really soon. I want more distilleries. I want this industry to grow, and I want to help others. I get to serve on a local community foundation board and head up the impact investing committee, making sure we invest in underrepresented businesses. And I've always advocated for more people to be at the table and a part of the process. I want to use the power that Cardinal has for good. And this is kind of what that looks like for us, right? I can't remember a time that we've ever turned down a donation request. We've helped countless people start businesses, including other distilleries, both here in Indiana and elsewhere. We employ 50 people full-time and of course some part-time as well. We offer health insurance and benefits, and we love to support the causes that they care about. We love, love, love helping others. We champion causes that aren't always popular in Indiana. We have a Pride vodka that supports the LGBTQ communities, plus communities and organizations. We support conferences and organizations like Radical Exchange that supports equity and equality in the service industry. This last year, we produced over 200,000 gallons of hand sanitizer, and we donated countless to just tons of organizations around the country. We really care deeply about others because we realize that we all need to be caring about others. We all need to be helping others as much as we can. And who would have thought that learning how to make vodka and whiskey and how to turn a bill into a law would help so many others? But I'm so happy that it did. Love having a distillery and love helping our community. I love manufacturing things and making something that I can hold in my hands. So thanks for sharing my story and listening tonight. I really, really, really appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks, Megan.
Oh no, Jeff, thank you so much. What an incredible journey. And I love your self-awareness and your sense of humor about yeah, this is the process, but you're using all of your powers for good to help so many more people. You're really modeling such leadership there, and we appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Thanks for letting us tell our story.
Heck yeah, thanks so much. Awesome. So we are going to round the bend now and bring up our final storyteller, who from the looks of our YouTube chat has a lot of fans out there waiting. Lisa Dahl is coming to us. Hi, Lisa, from Sedona, Arizona, where she's going to talk to us about how she really her journey to entrepreneurship in an unexpected way. Take it away, Lisa.
Thank you so much. Everyone, you have to excuse my voice. I got a little hoarse, but I'm going to let it rip. Believe it or not, I was born and raised in Indianapolis myself. My mother was the first entrepreneur of her kind, and she opened her first high fashion women's clothing store at the Speedway right after she graduated. She was really a true fashionista and a trendsetter, to say the least. And hopefully one might say that the apple didn't fall far from the tree. I basically grew up on the floor of a retail clothing store where I learned the true meaning of service right out of the gate. I moved with my son, Justin, to the San Francisco Bay Area. He was just in first grade. We settled in Marin County, and I thought we had a pretty idyllic life. As a single mom whose son was only 17 years younger than myself, I was like a kid raising a kid. We always had a house full of his friends, and needless to say, there was a very convivial atmosphere always around our house. After school and work, gathering around the kitchen was really part of our everyday life. We loved cooking together, and quite honestly, I think we were really foodies before we even knew that that was a word. Those were the happiest days of my life. One day, unbeknownst to me, Justin rode his bike over the Golden Gate Bridge to the Haight-Ashbury. He never came back. He attempted to intervene in a street robbery, and it was already in progress. He raced to retrieve a backpack that was being stolen from a handicapped man, and he lost his life in the act. Everyone in San Francisco just referred to Justin as a good Samaritan, and he became known as the Golden Boy. In those days, street crime was not an everyday occurrence like it is now. He was, quite honestly, at the wrong place at the wrong time, but he didn't die in vain. His magnanimous power of energy and selflessness could even be felt by those that didn't know him, and he touched lives then and still touches lives, countless lives now. Needless to say, from that day forward, my life as I had known it was never going to be the same. And I can honestly say that I left my heart in San Francisco. I couldn't sustain my old way of life. I was completely surrounded by reminders of where he spent his youth. Every street corner, record store had a memory associated with it that I just couldn't escape. I had once been to Sedona with a boyfriend for a very short trip a few years before, and it was so beautiful and serene. To be honest, I never thought I would live there. But after Justin was killed, I took a little journey there with my parents in hoping to find a safe haven to call my home. It was as if the decision to move there was being angelically guided. Driving a moving truck on my own to Sedona was really scary. And it wasn't the physical move, but that trepidation and fear of not knowing anyone. I'll never forget how alone I felt in those days. I just stood in the middle of my new house, feeling totally cold and alone. And looking out on the snow of this blackened sky, I was thinking, oh my God, what in the hell am I doing here? All of a sudden, through the snowfall in Sedona, the most beautiful, supernatural double rainbow I ever had seen with all my eyes. It was a sign from me, from Justin, telling me that I made the right decision, and I never, ever doubted that again. As luck would have it, about a year later, my realtor found a restaurant property for lease. My boyfriend at the time was an Italian chef, and together we founded Dahl and DeLuca Ristorante Italiano in 1995. The realtor threw a birthday party for himself on the first night of business, which was just great because we got to show off our stuff to all the locals and definitely bring in some much needed bucks. 25 years later, that restaurant is still the #1 fine dining destination landmark that paved the way for all of my culinary aspirations. The dedication of my son, Justin, is still on the menu, and it states, love is the solution. We reap what we sow, and it's touched millions and millions of hearts. Justin and I had always dreamed of opening a restaurant of our own. He was going to be my maitre d', and I'd be the cooking mom. It was my passion for cooking that has always kept me connected with him. Everyday struggles in the kitchen were definitely taking a toll on my boyfriend and my relationship. The fact that we were business partners made it a lot worse. It seemed like we were at odds over every little thing. And in the midst of our second restaurant, Cucina Rustica, we were in the midst of a turbulent breakup. By immersing myself into the creative process of building and designing the new restaurant, it really, really got me through and helped me channel my emotions in a much more positive way. It took an act of God and several years of struggle to be able to buy out my partner. But finally, in December 2011, I got my freedom, and that was worth the cost of admission, becoming my own entrepreneur. It's a monument of beauty and a favorite of so many to this day. Writing a cookbook as a memoir was something I dreamed of, but not as easy when you have so much going on every day. But when the time was right, it was as if I was being given permission from the spirit realm. As soon as I began the process, I felt as if my pen was like moving with a mind of its own. And I know for sure it was being guided by my son and my father, who just recently passed away. The title, The Elixir of Life, came to me and had deep meaning to me. Writing that book was definitely the defining moment that gave me a voice of my own and recognition for my culinary contributions to my restaurant. To my surprise, I won the IPPY Award, International Cookbook of the Year. A decade later, I opened my first wood fire pizzeria in an old Pizza Hut. The location popped up and I jumped on it. But I was kidding myself if I thought it was going to be an easy as pie proposition. I thought I had pretty thick skin. I always had worked so hard. I didn't realize that there were so many critics and haters. But back then, social media sites began to turn people into food critics. In the end, most of them turned out to be jealous competitors. But a very special message came to me by way of a friend's son who had a dream where he saw a boy at the wood fire oven making pizza. And he turned around and he said, "You tell my mom that everything is going to be okay. I'm with her always." And that was the affirmation that I really needed to figure out all the little deficiencies, and I was going to really make it work. I couldn't let a few negative people make me cave. As luck would have it, we turned around, hitting $1 million in revenue on the night of our first anniversary, and became the #1 pizzeria in a town of many. 8 years later, we're in the process of building out Pizza Lisa 2 in hopes of going national, and we're still #1. There was an old abandoned real estate office in Sedona, and it was sitting up on this beautiful vista with a view that was second to none. This property was so gorgeous that the building had long since fallen from grace. My mother, who was my biggest fan and partner in crime, every time that we drove by, she'd say, "You need to have a restaurant there, Lisa." And I would say, yeah, right, Mom, that's impossible. Several years later, the owner came to me and asked if I'd like to co-develop the property and put in a restaurant. But there was one major hitch. It wasn't zoned for commercial use. And the rezoning process in such an environmentally protected area like Sedona, they said could take up to a decade. Through countless dog and pony shows and city council meetings, coupled with my reputation for keeping Sedona beautiful, it passed in just short of a unanimous vote. Construction began about a year later on what would become the future home of Mariposa Latin-inspired grill. I'm proud to say that the first year we opened, we welcomed well over 100,000 guests, and it was already receiving national acclaim, and soon was awarded in the top 20 most beautiful dining destinations worldwide by American Express, and 100 most scenic restaurants in America by Open Table. Hence the name Mariposa. It means butterfly in Spanish, and it's a symbol for healing and transformation for so many like me. In December 2019, I opened my fifth concept, which is called Butterfly Burger, a couture burger lounge. It was a natural evolution. After winning the Scottsdale Burger Battle 3 times, I was the only female chef, the only contestant without an existing burger concept, and was also the only restaurateur outside of the greater Phoenix market. Before opening, I appeared on Beat Bobby Flay for the Grill Me episode where we battled over sliders. Oh, although I didn't actually win, the judges admitted that it wasn't a unanimous decision, but I still felt like I was really the winner. The exposure has been the gift that just kept on giving. It's still being aired to this day. Many people still tell me they really think I should have won. Everything that I have accomplished is in honor of my son. I try to make him proud of me every day. It was truly humbling to receive the Foodist Award 2018 Top Chef Arizona and 2019 Food Pioneer by the Arizona Restaurant Association. I was so honored to be recognized by my peers in the industry that I love so much. Realizing that I was becoming a role model and an inspiration for men and women is something I never, ever take for granted. By following my mission, when you cook with love, you feed the soul. I have been able to give philanthropically in ways I never could have dreamed. In March of 2020, we, like many restaurants, were forced to lock down operations. We sadly let go of over 300 employees, many like family. We have now very slowly and steadily and safely reopened all 5 restaurants and brought back about 250 tenured employees, as well as a lot of fresh new talent to our group. Through all of the trials and tribulations, I feel so blessed to be the CEO of Dahl Restaurant Group and be recognized by Hospitality Magazine as one of the top emerging brands. My romance with food has been my salvation. It's connected me with my son for all these years. It will also be the title of my highly anticipated second book coming out this year, hopefully, which has taken over a decade to write. Our mantra, devoted to excellence and blessed by grace, has never been more poignant than now. And I'm so blessed to share my story with storytellers. Thank you, and thank you all.
Lisa, thank you so much for your story. And thank you for pushing through your lost voice and sharing your heart with us so much.
Oh, I'm so thankful. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, Lisa, we really appreciate you and just like your level of thoughtfulness in telling what we know is a really intense and emotionally sometimes difficult story. So thank you for closing our show with so much soul.
Very honored. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we want to bring up all of our storytellers right now so we can thank everyone and say, Lisa, thank you, Jeff, Allison, Keena, and Sheree. Thank you all for being on tonight's show and sharing your journey with us, your hustle, and your enthusiasm.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Also to all of our viewers, thank you so much for tuning in tonight and being with us as part of this show. I hope it inspires you to patronize the local businesses that you've been missing during the pandemic. And remember, there are real people hustling behind the scenes to make America's small businesses work. And right now, I think, if you have a little extra income and you can spend it on things like this, it makes a huge difference to the everyday entrepreneurs in our communities, some of whom you've met tonight. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a good night.